Fadeout, a Dave Brandstetter mystery, Book 1, author Joseph Hansen, publisher, University of Wisconsin Press, Terrace Books, 1970, narrator Eric Ost. Fadeout, a Dave Brandstetter mystery, Joseph Hansen, writer, published by the University of Wisconsin Press, Terrace Books. Chapter 11. The snapshot was dog-eared and faded and had lost its gloss in bright sunlight. A blond boy in ragged swim trunks and a smaller dark boy in Levi's, shirt open and flapping in the wind, grinned at the camera. Side by side, they stood easy, hip-shot arms thrown over each other's shoulders on a pier. A gull swung above them. Beyond them, through strong scaffolding, the ocean glinted. He had seen scaffolding like that lately. Where? That was 1941, 26 years ago. It doesn't seem possible. The little pet shop woman in her flowered smock peered up at Dave. Her glasses were thick, a circle of white cloth pasted inside one of the lenses. The visible eye was black and bird-bright. Birds surrounded her in shiny cages, canaries, parakeets, finches, noisy flowers. They spent the whole summer at Bell Beach, one of them. I don't even remember now if it was Fox or Doug. Sold a dozen silly schoolboy cartoons to some pulp paper magazine, and so they had a few dollars. Her smile was fond, remembering how excited they were. It had to be a long time ago. Dave studied the photo. Kids today don't grin like that. No, they don't, do they? She nodded, troubled. It's as if they understand already that there isn't much in life to smile about. She sighed. And that's a shame. They ought to be like birds, like a bird in trouble. A kettle shrieked in the back room. She led him there. The place was dim under 40-watt bulbs. It smelled of seed, alfalfa, sawdust, bird food, rabbit pellets, cage, litter, paper barrels, bulging sacks, unopened cartons, dusty unsold aquariums, cages and swaths of brown paper. Behind chicken wire, guinea pigs hopped over the back of tortoises. A taffy-colored cocker spaniel nursed wriggling pups. A sick monkey hunched by a rain-gray window. The hot plate stood on a shelf beside a scarred refrigerator. There was an open pound paper box of sugar on the shelf. A jar of powdered cream substitute. She fixed mugs of instant coffee and cracked open a cellophane box to get him a little red plastic spoon to stir his with. They went into the shop again, hard, bright surfaces under a glaring fluorescence, bouquets of loud plastic flowers, a bubbling green fish tank. Dave lit a cigarette and picked up the photo. Doug looked smaller than Fox. Was he younger? Only 4 months. Fox's birthday was July. Doug's was November. But Doug was never strong. He had rheumatic fever when he was 7. He was delicate. We had to be careful with him, always. But he ended up in the Air Force, Dave said. Her laugh was brief and mirthless. It was a shock. The doctor had sworn his heart was damaged and it'd never be right again. Of course, we didn't keep running back to the doctor. Couldn't afford it in the first place, and after all, he never had spells or anything, just colds and little stomach upsets. The usual, and I watched him to be sure he never overdid. He was naturally quiet anyway, never cared for sports. And his heart mended? She snorted. Doctors! There probably wasn't anything wrong with it in the first place. A Mina bird by the front window threw back its head and laughed. It sounded human. She called. That's right, Rudyard. Blew at her coffee, frowned. It upset Fox something awful. He wasn't taken, into the service. I mean, can't say why, and neither of them expected Doug would qualify. Nobody did. Fox went over to the enlistment place with him. When they came home, you've never seen such long faces. She sipped gingerly at the coffee, set the mug down, and blinked at Dave. Do you know, I never knew 2 people as close as those 2 boys. Not in my whole life. She gave a little thoughtful headshake. And when Doug came home from Europe and saw that story in the Times, it was just a paragraph, about this radio entertainer going to run for mayor of some little ranch town. He yelled, really, right out loud, jumped out of his chair and came running into the kitchen, flapping the paper and threw his arms around me, and I swear, I don't know whether he was laughing or crying. There was a long ash on Dave's cigarette. She poked among the litter on the counter, cattle bone, plastic, wrapped dog toys, catnip mice, and found an oval milk glass, bird bath, and pushed it at him. Of course, she went on, I'd long ago lost track of Fox. He'd just dropped out of sight. When Doug was reported killed, he'd stayed on at the art school, but he left after that. When Doug turned up alive in a prison camp at the end of the war, I tried to find Fox, but he wasn't in the phone book. The aunt who raised him, church organist, she was dead. Come to find out, so that was where my search ended. Didn't have time to look for him right then. Mr. Sawyer was in the hospital, and I had my hands full with the shop. Her face said abused. Then, when Doug didn't come home, decided to stay on in Europe and take the occupation job the government offered him. Her mouth pinched up, and there was an edge of spite honed on self-pity to her voice. I guess I decided Fox didn't matter anymore. Any more than I mattered alone here. Dave stubbed out the cigarette. Doug didn't ask about Fox in his letters to you? Only in the first one is all. She forgot her hurt. The single blackbird eye was keen on Dave's face. And I thought of that when he showed all the excitement here about Fox in the paper. Seemed queer after 20-odd years. Why? He didn't even sit down to supper. I'd fixed him ham and scalloped potatoes. Dish he used to just drool over. No, sir. He threw a handful of clothes into an airline bag and jumped in that noisy car and chased off up the coast to find Fox. But he came back. Oh, yes. He was only gone a day. The coffee was drinkable now. She swallowed some. He said Fox has made quite a little success. Married. Small crooked smile. Imagine all these years. Got a grown daughter, married herself now. Fox. She clucked disbelief. He'll always be 16, 17, 18 to me. Doug says he's losing his hair. He had so much. His aunt was always after him to get it cut. Asked me to back her up. I did, of course. But it seemed a shame, all that shaggy yellow hair. Pretty, I thought. Did Doug say he'd met Fox's wife? Why? She chewed her lip. No, come to think of it, he didn't. She drank again, frowning. That's odd, isn't it? The fond smile returned. Can't imagine what kind of girl Fox would marry. Seems, well, impossible. She laughed at herself. But that's foolishness, of course. Why shouldn't he marry? She's small, dark, slender. Dave tipped his head at the photo. Like your son. He didn't marry? Doug? The smile. The little headshake regretted, apologized. No. But he adopted a young French boy, war orphan, Jean-Paul Rador. That's where Doug's interest in cars comes from. The boy was a mechanical, genius, I suppose you'd say, but Doug never cared about cars. When he was that age... Oh, he and Fox had an awful old rattletrap they used to get to school in, but neither one of them could fix it when it broke down, and it broke down seems like every week or so. She laughed, recollecting. But Jean-Paul... Doug housed and fed him and sent him through school. Then the Army had an automotive training course, and somehow Doug fixed things so he could be in that. Then afterward, he bought him a car to race in cars. I think he broke every bone in his body one time or another. But he did win. I don't know how it works exactly, but if you win, often you make all kinds of money. Then he was killed. Just about the time General de Gaulle shooed NATO out of France. All the same, I don't think Doug would have come home, not if Jean-Paul hadn't died at Le Mans. It was. The wound opened inside Dave's chest again. He turned and walked to the glass door and stared out at the empty street with the rain glazing it. A rundown neighborhood business district like 100 others in sprawling Los Angeles, shabby one-story stucco buildings, hairdresser, florist, bicycle shop. Without turning, he said, Now then, you told me he's not here because he got a telephone call Wednesday afternoon. October 18th? He'd been kind of quiet since he saw Fox. Depressed, I thought, but when the call came, well, I've never seen him so excited. His hands were shaking so that when he tried to hang up the receiver, he dropped it. The whole phone fell on the floor. His eyes were shining, just shining. He went straight to his room and started packing. Who was it? I asked him. But he said he couldn't tell me, nor what it was about either. Well, well, I assumed it was the government calling him for a job. He'd expected them to phone, only he didn't think he'd accept, but I guess it must have been a better offer than he'd expected. Where will you be going? I asked him. I hope not overseas again. He came and gave me a little kiss on the cheek and a hug and said he was sorry, but he couldn't tell me that either, so I just decided it was top secret. He promised he'd write me after he got settled. Dave turned. Has he written? No, but it's only been a few days. She cocked her head, frowning, weary. Mr. Brandstetter, you don't think that phone call was from Fox? Wednesday, October the 18th, was the date Fox disappeared. Dave came back to the counter. May I see your telephone directory? She stooped and rummaged it from under the counter. Birdseed rattled out of it when he turned the pages looking for the area code number of Pima. I'd like to call long distance, the town where Fox lived. I thought I'd talk to everyone there who could tell me anything. Now I'm not so sure. He laid down the phone book, dug out his wallet, and put a $5 bill into his hand. This should cover the call. It would feed a lot of feathery dependents, but she hardly noticed it. Her stare was anxious. She gave a meager nod. When the Peamer operator got him the number, the phone rang for a long time. He almost gave up. Then the voice was the one he wanted to hear, young, sullen. Signal station. This is Brandstetter, the dirty old man who gave your bird a hitch night before last, remember? She says you're a private eye. Figures you can't get any dirtier than that. I'm an insurance investigator. Very clean living. Fox Olson was insured for $150,000. I think he skipped out. Split. You want to help me find him? It sounded feeble in his own ears, as if he was trying to con a 6-year-old, but a cynical kid is still a kid. He was vulnerable. Adventure, excitement, revenge, just like on TV. Sure, why not? The son of a bitch. Good. Do you remember a Ferrari gassing up at your place maybe 2 weeks ago? Yeah, French plates. Did you see it only that once? Dave swallowed dryness. Or did it come back? Pause. It came back, grudgingly. You're sharp. The night Olson crashed his T-Bird in the canyon? Check. Late, raining to beat hell. It didn't have the French plate in the front anymore. It's nailed up on Buddy Monday's ceiling, Dave said. Did you notice where the Ferrari went? Did it turn up the canyon? His heart thudded. Yeah, I watched because it's such a bitchin' car. I stood there just to listen to the engine, till I couldn't hear it anymore. And you didn't hear it again. I closed up right after that, went home. How come you didn't tell the fuzz about this? They never asked me. Sure, Dave said. Okay, thanks. Shove the thanks. Send bread. Sandy hung up. Dave put down the receiver. He told the little woman. Doug was in Pima that night. Light glinted off the thick lenses. Are you saying my son would help Fox cheat your insurance company? Dave said gently. If Fox asked him to you think he'd refuse? A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.